Hey everyone. Someone on Reddit asked on how to cut curves or hair, fine cut with a blade or with a knife, something similar like that. So I thought I'd make a quick guide on how to do that. So I've made just some test geometry here. This is the good old pig head. And then I've made a quick blade. So this is just a box that I formed into a thin shape, as you can see here, and I've just made it into like a blade shape. And then I added some animation to that, just to let me show you. So I did this. So these together would give you the head and the blade. So with that in place, I just want to make some curves. So let's just paint something in here. Paint a mask. And I just want to paint, for now, the nose in here. Cool. And I will add generate here. And we'll use the mask in here. So skin attribute, let's just call it mask. Cool. Let's just put the length to 1 in here. So it's just very long, so we can use the cutting knife to reach them. So I think that's it. Now, what we want to do is the blade we have in here, we want to get the edge of it so we can trail it and make a geometry out of that cutting plane. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take this geometry and make it just curves. I'm just going to unroll this so it's curves. And I am going to select the edges that form the kind of the edge part of the blade. And I'm going to dissolve this. Dissolve. Let's do the opposite. And now we have the edge. I think at this stage I probably only need one side, but I'll leave that to you to decide on what you want. And what I'm going to do is to get this cutting plane that is going on in here, I'm just going to trail this using the length of the frame, so how long the frame has gone. So just for safety, now, I mean, we're starting at frame 1, but if it was something else, you just want to remove the beginning of it, so you only get from the beginning forward like this. And we'll change this to mesh, and there you go. So that's the cutting plane we have. This is very linear right now, but you get the idea. You can get any shape, or if your sword was doing something else, you could still do the same thing. And just to make this as one geometry, I'm just going to fuse the points. So it's going from 126 points to 48 points. Cool. And now to get the cut, what we want to use, there's a labs tool called Boolean. I think is it a labs tool? Labs curve. Yeah, labs Boolean curve. So this one is just a fracture based on a plane. So we can take the first geometry is our hair that we have in here, and we'll connect the plane we have into the second input. And just to give you an idea what's going on. So I'm just going to put this to one segment to begin with, just so you know what's going on. And as you can see, when this plane hits, you can see we get more points in the middle. And this is giving us the cutting plane, and I can show you that by just exploding the geometry. And you can see that it's separated in the middle in there, as you can see. So that's a good start. We'd like to put this on shatter. Now we want to group the base geometry, the base points, so we have them as the kind of the pinpoints close to the geometry. And to do that, I'm just going to take the geometry and I'm going to peek it out. That's the geometry of the pig. I'm just going to peek it out by 0.1, so it's a bit larger. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can select the beginning points. Let me just put this back to 8 segments as it was before. And now we can see what we can select in here. So go back. This should be points. And let's select bounding object. And as you can see, we're just selecting the base point. So maybe you want to reduce that a tiny bit, just so we're getting only the beginning points. You can do this in many ways. You can calculate the curve view and only select the beginning ones or something like that. But I'm just doing this in a simple way. Let's call this base. So base group. Now, there's a couple of ways to do this. Actually, there's probably more than a couple of ways, but the quick ones I can come up with is 2 ways to do it in Vellum. It depends on how dynamic the curves, how dynamic you want the curves to be. One of them makes them very dynamic and they respond to the hit of the blade, but then you wouldn't get like the fine cut that you might need. You could do that if you maybe tweak them a bit in the Vellum constraint and the other settings in Vellum. And there's another way to do this by just cutting it without a lot of dynamics happening to the curves, by stopping the regions that don't need to move at all and activating the regions that should be moving. So I'm just going to start with the a bit less dynamic way. It's still Vellum, but it's a bit less dynamic. So to begin with, I'm just going to promote this group to sorry, not the group. I'm just going to promote this to primitives. So base to primitives. I'm just going to deactivate this one. So, and what this does is when you get the cut, it's selecting only the regions that are actually close to the base or close to the geometry that haven't been cut. Now let's just make this into points again. So I'm just going to group promote again. I'm going to put this to base and to points. So now it's points, but it's also doing the same thing as we just had. Great. We want the geometry to be already cut at, we want it to enter the Vellum sim with the cuts already existing in there. So I'm just going to time shift this to the end. So $fn. And that would be the last frame, and it's not doing much anymore. And I'm just going to delete that group. So delete group. There you go. And what we're going to do is, while we have the cut geometry, I'm just going to transfer the group dynamically from the dynamic one, so from the changing group. So let's just select only the base point group. And if we take a look at that now, you can see it's still broken. So it's still, if we do like the exploded view, it's still divided, but we have the group in there. So I'm just going to show you this quickly. So if you put this to points, as you can see, it's selecting only the regions we want to be close to the base, and it's still cut, where it wasn't like this before, as you can see in here. Wait. There you go. It wasn't like this before. So, cool. Now let's add a Vellum constraint Vellum here. Cool. And we'd like to change a few settings. We have a base that we want to use. So it's the base that we want to pin. And in this one, we just want to stop the curves from moving and not permanently stop them. Let's put down a Vellum solver. Oh, we should probably go to the first frame. And let's go inside, and in here we need to add a geometry wrangle. What we need to do is get this stopped attribute that we created using this pin type. We need to get it dynamically. So this is based on the base group, and as you saw here, the base group is dynamic and is changing. Let me show in here. So we need this to be reflected in the attribute, which it does in the Vellum constraint, but it doesn't do that by default inside the Vellum solver. So we need to read that in dynamically in here. So we just need to read in that attribute by. So let me just put the input here to the first input, so it's easier to read in. I at stopped. That's the integer variable called stopped. And we want to bring that in from the first input. Stopped, and the point we're looking for is the ptnum. So ptnum. There we go. Semicolon at the end, and that should be it. Get stopped, just so we're a bit clear on what we're doing. And now let's try this. Something's happening. Let's just put a ground in here. Oh, where did I do that? Here, ground. I just don't want to see the ground, so let's just remove that from. It should be correct. Okay, cool. So we have a ground in here now, and if we just look at this together with our head and our sword, let's see in here. Here we go. You can see. Go. It's cut and it's falling down in a simple way, if you want to call it that. There's not a lot of dynamics happening, but it is, if you want like a fine cut, fine blade cut, I think this can do. So as you can see here, it's a fine cut. Cool. So that's method one. The other method is a bit more dynamic. It depends on what you like, really. So let's try the other one. I'm just going to move this to the side a bit in here. Cool. So what we need to do first, I just want to fuse these geometries together because they are separated. I just want to fuse them together now. And wherever they snap together, I want to make that as a group. So there's in the fuse, there's a grouping option here. So this is the group of the snapped points, which will be useful. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a, so using the Vellum here, there's a breaking option in here. And using this one, we will drive this by an attribute that makes the region that we don't want to cut to have a very high value, and the region we want to cut have very low value. Let me show what I mean. So let's go in here and let's add in adjust float. Let's call this break scale. And this first one, let's put this to set initial and let's give it a value of, let's say, 100. Now let's do a copy of this one, Alt drag, and let's keep it the same name, but now let's select the group that we created in here. Let's just copy this one. It's not going to be given to you in here, so we're just going to copy it from the fuse node. So copy it, and then I'm just going to paste it in the group in here. And let's just visualize the break scale now. And let's put this to set always. And right now you're not seeing much because first of all, let's change the value here to something very low. And it's not cut yet, so let's just go forward. And as you can see, it's very faint, but there's a change in here. There's a change in color. I hope you see that. It's in here. Let's zoom in even closer. As you can see in here, it's cutting these and it's making this region very low in break scale value. Cool. Let's just remove this visualizer. And now let's add a Vellum hair constraint. And in here, we want to use the base as our pin point, as you can see in here. Let's keep this at permanent for now. Actually, on this setup, I think it should be on permanent. So let's have a very high stiffness on the bend as we did. Let's put this to even higher. And now on the breaking, let's drive this by an attribute, and let's call this break scale. Let's give this a value of 2 to begin with. Let's see if that works. Now let's add a Vellum solver. And just like before, let's add a ground, and let's just remove it from being visualized. And I'm going to add a bit more sub-steps to this one. But for this one to work, we need the collision geometry, which is our sword in here. So I'm just going to drag this to the side. It's getting a bit messy in here. So move this exploded view. You don't need this anymore. And let's just clean this a tiny bit in here. And let's drag. So from the Vellum here, from the top, the last input in here, it's a collision geometry. I'm just going to drag this and connect it to our sword in here. I'm just going to make it to Alt and press on the line, and we can just make this into a dot in here. And this can also be connected to this collision, although I don't think this setup is using any collisions. Cool. So I'm just going to drag this down as well, so we have them the same height. And let's try this on. Let's try the solver. So I'm just going to add the shader in here. So we have the shader. I'm just going to add a color in here so we see this a bit better. Color. Let's give it a green color. Cool. So we have this. We have this, and let's display this on. Oh, I forgot to add this like that. Cool. Let's play. Now, it's not cutting. Let's see what's happening. Right, we need to add a time shift so we have the last frame where the geometry is divided. So cool, forgot that. So I just copied this time shift where we did before, like the one we did before with f end. So it's using the last frame of the timeline. Cool, let's try again. And there you go. As you can see, that's a bit more dynamic. It's colliding with the geometry, and then only when it's bending enough, it is cutting. Now you can play around with the values on how much stiffness you want, and in turn you have to probably change the breaking threshold and or the values you have in the break scale to get it right. But this is at least a start of that. And that's it, really. Yeah. So if you want to cut any hair, curves, lines, or stuff like that, this is a way to do that at least. Thank you.